start off, I would like to extend my warm greeting to Professor Dr. Govinda Subba, former governor of province number 1. I think he is somewhere on second thought screen. I haven't seen so far on the screen. And also to Professor Dr. Kedar Paudel, to Dr. Ramji Timal Sinha, to Dr. Ramesh Izam Limbu, to host Subhas Teyung and Ms. Usha Kesi, and also to another speaker, Mr. Suresh Bantawarai, and also to all participants, although at the moment I cannot see them on the screen. I can only see 4 people on the first screen: Dr. Ramesh Timal Sinha, Subhas Teyung, myself, and Mr. Suresh Rai. Well, coronavirus appeared first of all in Wuhan, China on 17 December. And it was absolutely a new thing to China, to Chinese doctors, scientists, and government. That is why they faced very hard time. They had to do a lot of things. And to ascertain various things, its characteristics of the virus, I think took few weeks for Chinese government. That is why by that time, I think few weeks elapsed. And by that time, the virus had spreading rapidly, and a large number of Chinese people have become ill, and that followed fatalities. And when it was going on, Chinese government realized that they didn't have any alternative but to lock down the Hubei province, which has a population of 65 million, and the city Wuhan has a population of 11 million. And it imposed a lockdown in Hubei province and also imposed draconian measures that people from Wuhan, China, Wuhan city and Hubei province were not allowed to leave the province, and also from outside Hubei province allowed the province. That is why, since the measures were very stricter, Chinese government succeeded to contain the spread of virus more earlier than the world actually had thought of. And later the virus began to spread in other countries. It spread first of all in Europe, although it had thought that in this region, being very close to China, being its immediate neighbor in America, it may be the reason because they have large volume of business, and accordingly same proportion of movement. A large number of people from European countries have been going to Wuhan and other parts of China, and similarly Chinese people might have been going to Europe and America. It could be the reason. And gradually the virus began to spread rapidly in European countries, and fatalities also grew unimaginably. Infections also grew. I think you know the number of fatalities that happened in the United States and also in Italy, in France, Germany, Britain. That is why this government, also having no alternative, began to impose lockdowns in their countries. And until a few days early, I think billions of people around the world were confined to their homes because they didn't have alternative. And these days, all businesses are shut down. All hotels and restaurants are shut down. Industries are shut down. schools and colleges and universities are also closed. Examinations are delayed or suspended or cancelled. That is why the entire humanity, all governments of the world have been suffering huge economic loss, huge losses of jobs, and huge human losses. In the beginning, when the virus had started to spread in Wuhan, during that time, Trump administration actually dismissed, downplayed its threat, and said that until then, the United States had not suffered any fatality. Any American people had not succumbed to COVID-19. And until that time, he was praising President Xi Jinping that he was doing a good job. He loves his country, loves his people, and was doing a good job and dealing with the tough situation very well. But when the number of infections and fatalities dramatically grew in Europe and United States, and then President Trump and US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo changed their theories and began to put all blame on Chinese government. Although the scientists, experts of related field, doctors, and related people have been more often than not saying that this virus was not emanated in a laboratory somewhere in Wuhan. And so far, there's no evidence that the scientists have been saying. On the other hand, the President Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo have been insisting, and more often than not giving interview by saying that they have enormous amount of evidence. They have significant amount of evidence, and said that it is not the first time that China has been spreading such virus in the world. They have a history of spreading such virus. They have a history of running substandard laboratories. And another point to take into account is the head of the states of very developed, powerful, and prosperous countries like British Prime Minister, Chancellor Angela Merkel, or President Emmanuel Macron have been echoing his view. And it seems that in the post-coronavirus world, there will take place a new polarization among countries. And I think the relations between China and America have already reached to nadir. And I think we cannot be optimistic that very soon, in the immediate future, their relations might improve. And I think if this situation goes on, and then ultimately, United States might wage war on China, and the remaining European countries, like I mentioned earlier, might align with the United States of America. But I think it may prove counterproductive to America as well, since China is equally powerful, maybe in some senses more powerful than the United States, because China has larger population than the United States. China has larger strength of army than the United States. That is why in some senses it is more powerful. That is why even if the United States wage war on China, it might prove counterproductive. But even if it doesn't do that, the existing Cold War between Beijing and Washington might deteriorate in the future. And if that happens, since they're being the largest economies in the world, their Cold War obviously impact the entire humanity, and Nepal cannot be exception of it. And the scientists have been saying that that they cannot say when we can get rid of this virus. Therefore, I think about 80 research teams have been developing a vaccine against this virus. And some research teams, for example, a team working in Oxford University led by Professor Sarah Gilbert, has recently said that the team will produce about 1 million doses by September this year. And she has lots of confidence because she has been working in this area for the last many years, and also has been working to develop viruses in laboratory. And they already had trials on humans. And the first trial on humans was carried out in Seattle, the United States. And similarly in other countries also, some teams have been having trials on humans and animals. However, some scientists say that there is conflicting reports coming in, and the conflict is, some scientists say that the vaccine might come in the market only by mid-2021. So until then, it seems that the infections and the fatalities will continue. Therefore, under this situation, Nepal's government should also become very serious, and all the parties, whether they are big or fringe, all the leaders, whichever echelon belongs to, the intelligentsia, the lecturers, the journalists, the police, the army, have to forget their differences, have to forget their animosities, and have to forget their past mistakes, must come round, must work together, and must work their fingers to the bone to develop, progress, and prosper this nation at the earliest possible time. Nepal is one of the unfortunate countries in the world because Nepal has been suffering from consecutive catastrophe, because in 5 years before, Nepal was suffered by the earthquake, and that followed the undeclared Indian blockade. And this is the third one, and this is, I think, the most severest. If we take into account the economic losses, the job losses, the human losses. So far, it will be too early to estimate that how huge fatalities and infections and economic losses will happen in Nepal, because it has just started in Nepal. But if the situation that happened in European countries and the United States repeats in Nepal, then it becomes very unthinkable. Tens of thousands of people might lose their lives, and huge amount of economic losses will occur. So far also, in the past lockdown of 2 months long, according to some economists, the country has suffered 2 trillion rupees of loss. That is why the government has to spend more money. On the other hand, the government will be earning less money. It will be collecting less revenues. It will be raising less taxes, and it will be receiving less remittances from abroad. And also, thousands of people might be returning from India, and also tens of thousands of people, youth people working in Middle East, will be returning to Nepal. So the loss, the economic loss, the human loss, the job losses, and other losses will be really huge. And according to some psychiatrists, that will follow a tsunami of mental illness, because tens of thousands of people have lost their jobs. Tens of thousands of people have lost their income source. Actually, the wage earners have no food to eat these days. The governments of concerned countries and some institutions and some individuals have been providing them food and money these days. And also tens of thousands of people were hospitalized. Tens of thousands of people lost their near and dear ones. They were kept in intensive care unit for months. They are not allowed to leave their houses. They were confined to their houses for months. They are not allowed to visit beautiful places to unwind their exhaustions and tensions. That is why psychiatrists have issued warning that the post-coronavirus world will follow a tsunami of mental illnesses, and of course will follow dramatically big suicide cases, I think, because the factors I mentioned are also related with suicide cases. Already there is a large number of suicide cases across the world, and the factors I mentioned might, of course, encourage the people to commit suicide. And under this situation, particularly the United States and the powerful governments of Europe, I touched upon earlier, have Herculean responsibility. If they behave responsibly, if they deal with other countries responsibly, forgetting their animosities, past mistakes, and their selfish interest. For example, Beijing and Washington, D.C. have problem in South China Sea. They have problem regarding Taiwan. They have problem regarding trade between Beijing and Washington, D.C. A few years back, China aggressively began to occupy islands in South China Sea and also converting reefs and shoals into man-made islands. On the other hand, the United States government has not been recognizing the occupation of China, has not been recognizing the sovereignty of China on those islands. And on the other hand, the United States is sailing its naval vessels in the close proximity of Chinese-made islands, and also trying to reassert its rights to sail in the international water. In addition, a year back, the United States National Security Advisor John Bolton met a top Taiwanese defense official. Actually, Beijing wants the United States to follow one China policy, but in practice, Trump administration is not doing that. And when John Bolton met a top Taiwanese defense official, such meeting has not happened in the last 40 years. So these things have been adding fuel to their tensions. And also, when President Trump had yet to come to the office of White House, he had been saying that China had been reaping benefits, unfair benefits from American trade. That is why as soon as he came to power, he began to mount pressure on Chinese government, on President Xi Jinping. But even if he tried for long, the Chinese government did not seem that it would bow down to American pressure, and ultimately President Trump began to increase tariffs on billions of dollars Chinese goods. China also retaliated, but since America exports far more than the United States does, China could do nothing, and ultimately China had to bow down and agreed for a dialogue, and they held dialogues for many rounds, and ultimately Chinese government agreed to buy American goods of 25,000 billion rupees, and also agreed to buy agricultural products of about 4,000 billion rupees. And when this tension is going on between Washington and Beijing, the European governments have been echoing the same view, and that hints a danger in the world. Therefore, I think I tried to cover a lot. And before I conclude my talk, I would like to say that this is a very serious situation, not only for Nepal, for all the humanity. And the post-coronavirus world will be dramatically different. To deal with that, we all Nepalese, and particularly the entire humanity, must come round, must come together, must work together to have a cordial relationship, to have a friendly relationship, to have a cooperative relationship, and to resolve all the problems the humanity has been facing because of this COVID-19. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Kandangwa. You have really presented your views upon this possible predicaments on this human world and its problems in terms of economy, its politics, and so on. Thank you so much, Dr. Kandangwa. Now it's time